The subject of the tribulation is a hot topic today. It was a hot topic 40 years ago when I first heard about it. What's the difference between then and now? Time. Time has made the difference. Since then, as I pointed out in my last video, wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilences and earthquakes, and other frightening things have occurred with regularity, indicating the present, the days that we are in now, as the beginning of the end of time, as it is described in the Bible. In my last video, I read from Matthew 24, verses 1 through 8, as Jesus told us what to look for that would lead us to know where we are in his timeline. Jesus is quoted on this subject in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Why are 3 chapters of the Gospels dedicated to this one subject by Jesus? I think the reason is found in 2 Corinthians 13:1. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. In this lesson, I will be taking the text from Mark 13, verses 9 through 23. The tribulation will last 7 years, as defined by the prophet Daniel in Daniel 9:27. It is divided by an occurrence which I will explain when I get to it. At that point, we will plummet into the second half of the tribulation, which is going to be very, very bad. That will be covered in my next video. From Mark 13:9, I read, "But watch out for yourselves, for they will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in the synagogues." Today it's the churches. "You will be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them." Many Christians believe that we will not experience hard times until the second half of the tribulation. I believe that Jesus is laying out the occurrences of the tribulation in the order in which they will appear. The very first occurrence that he shares with us is a warning to watch out, because some of us believers will be taken before tribunals and churches where we will be beaten as punishment for believing in God. Don't you think this can happen? I am recording this in March 2025. Today, in Scotland, there is a grandmother sitting in prison for the heinous act of silently praying in her mind for women in an abortion clinic. Scotland actually has a law that forbids silent praying even in their homes. Here in the United States, another granny was arrested for the very same reason by the FBI. I watched in horror during the pandemic lockdown when a Canadian preacher was arrested in the middle of a street, handcuffed, and literally dragged to a police car. He was arrested for allowing people to gather for prayer in his church. Don't be surprised when the law allows carnal punishments in our churches. It says that Jesus will allow this as a testimony to them. For some, this will be a real eye-opener. Verse 10, "And the gospel must first be preached to all the nations." The gospel literally means the good news. The good news has already been taken to every continent and people. This was not so in the days of Jesus, but it is now. Verse 11. But when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will speak. But whatever is given you in that hour, speak that. For it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. Listen to how that begins. But when they arrest you. Yes, many of us will be arrested and taken before a magistrate to determine our guilt or innocence. Guilt or innocence? Yes. In not too many years, it will be illegal to own a Bible. Preaching will be outlawed, and religious gatherings like church will be against the law. People that do so will be put in jail. Don't complain. You will have 3 meals a day and a cot. For some, that will be a blessing. Jesus has instructed us not to plan out what to say. When you stand before the magistrate, thoughts will be given to you, so to speak. That will be God speaking through you. The magistrate and the courtroom can no longer hear what God might say on TV because speaking of God will be forbidden. God will share His gospel through you. Don't hold back. Be brave and speak out. Verse 12. Now brother will betray brother to death, and father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. This does not apply to families who do not know the Lord, or families where everyone are Christians. Families where there is a mix of believers and unbelievers will experience the trauma of familial treachery, even to death. Something is missing. Did you hear Jesus mention a rapture or anything like it? No, He did not. He did not mention it because it will not happen. It is not part of His agenda. See my video called The Rapture, Is It Real? We are now halfway through the tribulation. Watch the news for this next occurrence. The announcement that the third temple will be built in Jerusalem will have a huge impact on the future of the world. King Solomon built the first temple for the Lord, but it was torn down by the Babylonians about 586 BC. The second temple was built by Herod. This is the temple where Jesus taught the people and healed many who came to Him for healing. It is the same temple that the disciples showed Him. Jesus told His disciples, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." 40 years later, the Roman general Titus had been given permission to destroy Jerusalem because the Jews were so rebellious. The Romans were so thorough when they tore down the temple that there is no trace of its original location. The pictures that we see today are artists' renderings and pictures showing the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is 37 acres. It is supported by walls built for Herod's temple. All the art and the computer renderings of the new temple show it where the Dome of the Rock once stood. The Dome of the Rock is a treasured religious site for the Muslims, as it is believed to be the spot where Muhammad ascended into heaven. If the Jews destroy this mosque, it will be a religious war that will cost a lot of lives. Didn't Jesus say that not one stone shall be left upon another? Look at the Temple Mount. There are 37 acres of marble slabs still in place. Doesn't the Wailing Wall with all its stones support the Temple Mount? Maybe Jesus was mistaken when he said that not one stone would be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. I doubt it. There is no archaeological evidence that the temple occupied that 37-acre spot. It is thought to be the place of the Second Temple because of Jewish tradition. That's a long story. There is, however, evidence, a lot of evidence, that the temple was about 1,000 feet south of the Temple Mount. This is the place called the City of David, where Herod's temple was actually built. This is where the third temple will be built. Watch for it. Do a YouTube search for the City of David. It is a very interesting video. Why is this so important? Because Jesus made it important. I continue with verse 14. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let the reader understand. Let the reader understand. Jesus didn't say that. It was an editor's note. The abomination of desolation standing where it ought not is a reference to the Antichrist standing in the Jewish temple. The Antichrist is probably a Muslim. They call him the Mufti. He is no doubt very handsome, very, very bright and charismatic. People will be drawn to him and will gladly appoint him to be a head of state of some country. At a time when there are several wars going on, he will make promises of peace and safety. He will be appointed to lead the one world government. After that happens, he will go to Jerusalem, where he will go to meet with the President of Israel. After that, he will ask to see the temple. After entering, he will seat himself on the mercy seat and declare himself the leader of the world and demand people to worship him. Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18 tells us, He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. You thought it was hard to be a Christian before this? Wait until his money system is introduced. Overnight, national currencies will disappear, and everyone will be forced to receive a chip and a tattoo in their right hand or forehead before they can access their own money from the bank. What is the mark? 40 years ago, we thought it was a barcode tattooed on the right hand or the forehead. Today, there seems to be some consensus that it will be an RFID chip, just like veterinarians put in your pet's ear. It will be inserted between your thumb and your index finger of the right hand, or inserted under the skin of your forehead. It will be about the size of a grain of wild rice. Stan Johnson believes there will be an associated tattoo so that people can instantly be recognized as being part of the gang. Check out Prophecy with Stan on YouTube. President Trump has already stopped the Treasury from minting pennies. Soon dollar bills and $5 bills will not be printed. He is preparing us for a digital finance system. We already have it, though, through credit cards. When currency is gone, we will use our credit cards for everything. The Antichrist will take it a step further by restricting anyone who does not have the mark on their right hand or forehead to be denied the ability to purchase anything, and they cannot sell anything either. Gas, food, rent, medicine, hospital, school, anything and everything will be denied those who refuse the mark. They will not be allowed to have jobs either. Protesters will be arrested. When a person is arrested for not having the mark, they will be told to take the mark or be executed. The book of Revelation says that they will have their heads chopped off. Some think it will be by guillotine, but I believe it will be by an Arabian scimitar. That is the way they still execute people today in Saudi Arabia. Mothers and dads, listen carefully. They will arrest you and your whole family and tell you that if you don't take the mark, they will execute each one of your children while you watch. Some pastors will tell their congregation that God is merciful in such circumstances. He will forgive you if you take the mark. No, He will not. This is what the Bible says about that. Revelation 14, verses 9 through 11. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worship the beast or his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name." This is an affront to God. For people to trust the beast's system over a loving God is like a slap in his face. You slap God, you get eternity in hell with no chance of an early pardon. Parents, allow your children to be executed. You will be rewarded by God, and it will include your children. It's a hard saying. I continue with Mark 13 and 14. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. This is a warning for the citizens around Jerusalem. but the rest is for everyone. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days, and pray that our flight might not be in winter. For in those days there will be tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the creation which God created until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless the Lord has shortened those days, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he chose, he shortened the days. If you are alive in this time, you have been chosen by the Father to endure the worst time in the history of man. Lucky you. This is the end of the video. It is not entertaining, but it is informative. Please share with someone else. Thank you for listening.